Aristotle is the fountainhead of the idea of natural right, or what is just by nature, dikaion pousikon. From this springs both the natural law teaching developed in classic form by St. Thomas Aquinas and the modern teaching on natural rights. But Aristotelian natural right differs in critical ways from both. In keeping with Aristotle's focus on virtue, in the Nicomachean Ethics justice, dikaiosune, comes to sight as a virtue, and indeed a crowning one, or complete virtue practiced toward others. Justice is, to be sure, a most challenging virtue to attain, sometimes so hard that it seems to be merely the good of another. This is a crucial reason we need law. But if justice is a true virtue and the practice of virtue is the core of happiness, meeting the challenges of justice and being a source of good in the way just citizens and leaders are must also bring fulfillment to a core element in our natures. For the political community, the just or right manifests especially as fairness, which again turns out to be problematic, for fairness takes various forms and these can be intention. As we have seen, the simple equality demanded by all citizens in a democracy can conflict with proportional equality based on merit, and Aristotle discusses similar complexities in criminal justice and the justice of commercial exchange. Thus the just is a standard that is ascertainable by reason yet comprises distinct strands pulling in different directions. But the most fundamental meaning of justice, which weaves all these others together, is the common good of the whole political community. Thus justice is both the virtue of a moderate, generous, well-ordered soul intent on securing a common good with others wherever it can be found, and the virtue of a well-ordered polity that pursues the common good under the guidance of practical wisdom. Practical wisdom is essential because the good is so complex, but at the same time practical wisdom is possible because the good is knowable, as an ordered hierarchy of essential but lower goods, such as safety and health and prosperity, and higher goods of the soul, such as love and friendship and the moral and intellectual virtues. So complex is right and so much do laws and conceptions of it vary. Aristotle acknowledges at the outset of his famous chapter on natural right in the Ethics, that some people claim that it is all conventional and not by nature. He grants that part of it is, the particular enactments that vary from place to place. These are just if they achieve a common good, but conventional inasmuch as their specific provisions are arbitrary. But against the conventionalists, Aristotle insists that behind or above all such laws is a natural part of right that has the same power everywhere and is not dependent on what people believe or enact. Yet, perplexingly, he says that even this natural part is altogether changeable. What is the power of right, and why is it changeable? Natural right for Aristotle has the same power everywhere because it is the common good of a community, and because in every community that has not utterly broken down there is a common good to be found, seldom perfect, sometimes quite limited, never reducible to uniform rules, but usually substantial and always worth pursuing. To say that natural right has the same power everywhere means that in all places there are ultimate costs to disregarding it. It means that justice is in every situation applicable, that there is always a best thing to do, even if it is hard to find, and that the best thing to do is the right thing to do. It means that justice does not demand the impossible and that it is never wrong to do the best possible, even if it is the lesser of grave evils. Natural right is changeable because right in real life on the ground is a messy matter of balancing competing claims, of different citizens, distinct kinds of good, and varied parts of justice itself. It is changeable because in the shifting exigencies of political life these tensions need to be managed differently at different times. It is changeable, moreover, because right is relative to the regime, and if there is only one best regime in principle, there is more than one just regime. For justice, again, does not demand changes that are impossible, but it does demand that we become the best version of ourselves that we can be. Aristotle's statement that natural right is altogether changeable is a denial that natural right can take the form of natural law, for it implies that there are exceptions to any uniform rule we might try to frame, while it is of the essence of law to be categorical. St. Thomas, in insisting that there is a natural law, argues that it rests on an eternal law given by God, promulgated through the conscience, and enforced both here and hereafter. Aristotle does allude to a moral sense, but it seems to draw as much from custom as from nature, and he never calls it a law, divine or otherwise. What he stresses as the proper source of guidance for action is practical wisdom, informed by the moral sense but also by education, practical experience, and reason. It is this that he says judges and statesmen need if they are to apply blunt laws equitably. It is also this that they need if they are to know when in extreme cases to suspend them, as Abraham Lincoln did with habeas corpus in wartime. Nor is Aristotelian natural right a matter of natural rights understood as individual, pre-political possessions. Justice as a virtue is the virtue of a political being. The just as the common good is a shared and not an individual good, involving trade-offs and requiring flexibility. Natural right as part of political right is something that nature helps us identify but that a political community must secure. In Aristotelian terms, individual rights are not possessions we bring to society, then, but are perhaps best conceived as powers that a wise society places in individual hands, chiefly to prevent oppression. So understood, rights are neither simply dictated by nature nor simply rooted in tradition, but human enactments grounded in a knowledge of our natures, our particular political community, and what is possible for us. The United States has tried to enshrine rights in this spirit but lacks the categories for thinking about it well, and so the efforts erode. Most obviously, the Second Amendment freedom to bear arms was originally conceived thus, as a power the community was relegating to individuals to allow them to take part in the collective self-defense project of a local militia, but it has devolved into a merely individual claim. In fact, the First Amendment is best understood this way as well, as a series of checks that shield individuals against certain kinds of prosecutions, certainly for the benefit of those individuals, but even more importantly to create a thriving sphere for political and intellectual discussion and organization and religious life for everyone. Reconsidering rights under the guidance of Aristotle would mean giving up absolutist claims and entering into more open negotiations, focused on the multiple goods we seek to protect and the real but limited contribution each asserted right can make to the common good of the nation. All of these considerations put Aristotle largely on the side of strong political communities, preferably small and homogeneous ones, with rich local traditions, shared religions, widespread political participation, and citizen armies. But while Aristotle is not a liberal, he has in several important ways a surprising sympathy with liberalism, tied to his judgment that humans are one of the animals that dualize. This dual character is what makes us not just political but selfish in many problematic ways. But it also has some more positive meanings. One of these is Aristotle's recognition that humans thrive best when we have a degree of self-sufficiency. Aristotle saw independent farmers with their self-reliance as the backbone of a good republic, an idea that Jefferson adopted with his embrace of yeoman farmers and Benjamin Franklin adapted with his encouragement of self-reliant skilled tradesmen and small business owners. This celebration of self-sufficiency is an important part of the American ethos. Our task is not to overcome it but to nurture it wisely and to balance it with richer sources of connection. Another meaning of our dualizing for Aristotle is that the very highest human perfections and fulfillments transcend the political community. The virtue that a city can inculcate is not complete virtue, nor is the city the highest thing. What is highest, Aristotle says, is the divine. He calls it the unmoved mover, and the closest human life can come to the divine is in philosophic contemplation. Only individuals can contemplate, in private and in ways necessarily in tension with a healthy community, because philosophy entails radical questioning. This tension Aristotle thinks must be managed and cannot ever be simply overcome, but his respect for both sides of it gives him more of an affinity for an open liberal society like Athens and less of an affinity for a closed, communal society like Sparta than we might otherwise suppose.